I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network, and this is a breaking news alert. Of course, we previously learned that former Vice President Mike Pence was subpoenaed by Special Counsel Jack Smith. Well, now we are learning that former Vice President Pence, like the coward that he is planning to fight the subpoena. He's planning not to show up and asserting privileges in order to avoid testifying before the criminal grand jury in Washington, D.C. that is investigating Donald Trump for various crimes, including election interference, the crimes committed on January 6th, where former Vice President Mike Pence was the victim. He was the one of the people who Trump was trying to kill. That shows you how spineless Pence is. And then there's another grand jury in Washington, D.C. that is focused on Donald Trump's theft of thousands of government records, including top secret and sensitive compartmented information, our nation's most highly guarded and classified information. So the way Pence is going to formulate his objections, and this is according to some great reporting by Kyle Cheney of Politico, who gets the scoops over and over again. I want to give a shout out to Kyle, who deserves a lot of credit for the hard work that he does and a lot of the writers over there do. But Pence's objection is not going to be on an executive privilege ground. Rather, it's going to be under the speech and debate clause ground. And the speech and debate clause generally provides certain immunities to members of the House of Representatives and members of the Senate for the speeches and for the things that they say on the floor of the respective chambers. The doctrine of the speech and debate clause has been expanded over the years by the United States Supreme Court, not just to provide immunity to the members of Congress, but also to their legislative aides, and also to not solely apply to what they say physically on the floor of their respective chambers or in the Capitol building, but also to their legitimate legislative activities that they engage in when they are outside of the Capitol building as well. So you may be saying, wait a minute. Well, Pence is not a member of the House of Representatives. He's not a Congress member. He's not a senator. So what is the authority for that? Well, first, let me read for you what the speech or debate clause says, because we're very textual here on the MeidasTouch Network. We just don't throw out concepts. We read the text together so that everybody can be fully informed on these doctrines so we could understand what's at issue here. Here it is. In Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1 of the United States Constitution, this is where the speech and debate clause is, and it says the following: the senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. They shall in all cases except treason, felony, and breach of the peace be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses and in going to and returning from the same. And for any speech or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. So that last sentence right there, and for any speech or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place, has been interpreted by the United States Supreme Court since the Constitution was created as basically providing immunity from civil lawsuits or for them testifying as witnesses for the legitimate legislative activities they engage in outside of the halls of Congress as well as inside the halls of Congress in their respective chambers. Well, under the United States Constitution, a Vice President of the United States also holds the title as President of the Senate. Article 1, Section 3, Clause 4 provides the following: the Vice President of the United States shall be President of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided. So what is Pence's main argument here? He argues, well, if I am the president of the Senate, I should be treated as though I am a senator or I am a Congress member. And therefore, I should have immunity from going in front of any grand jury or for having to be, to use the words of the Constitution, questioned in any other place at all. Now, Pence's argument is completely and entirely untested. Now, the speech or debate clause has been expanded over the years. For example, in the Supreme Court, United States versus Brewster, the court explained that there are purely legislative activities, which the speech or debate clause protects, and merely political activities, which it did not. Then the case Gravel versus the United States, a Supreme Court case from 1972, extended the clause to also include congressional aides, who are described as alter egos of the members of Congress, and also said legitimate legislative activity outside of the chambers is protected, but where a member of Congress engages in threats, extortion, criminal conduct, exhortation, and purely political conduct and conduct for the media, like purely engaging in press, that in those situations, speech or debate doesn't apply, but in any other legitimate legislative function, it applies. However, there's never been a case in our history where a former vice president is invoking the speech or debate clause as a way to not testify before a grand jury in a criminal investigation. So this is entirely new waters. And also, you may say, well, the vice president is not a member really of the Senate. They're not. If you look at the speech and debate clause, the language says senators and representatives shall receive a compensation. So isn't this referring generally to senators and representatives? Well, Pence would argue, I'm the president of the Senate, so I should be treated the same as though I am a senator. Now, in 2019, in the Trump administration, the Department of Justice had taken the position in a case before all of this that Pence was immune based on the speech or debate clause. But again, this is an untested theory. And also, Pence has a dual role. More than being the president of the Senate, which is really, if you look back at that clause, Article 1, Section 3, Clause 4, presiding over it when there's a tie to become the tiebreaker, if you will. The vice president's an executive branch member. So to say that you deserve the privileges as a senator when you are an executive branch official seems to be a bit absurd, but that's the argument that former Vice President Pence is making and is going to make. Legitimate legislative activity, I should be protected. So what arguments do I think Special Counsel Jack Smith is going to make or should be making when Pence raises this objection formally? And he's expected to raise it formally this week and saying, I'm not showing up before the grand jury. So this is then going to be litigated. A case is going to be filed. In re, it's going to be anonymous. So it's in re, grand jury proceedings are done secretly. And Judge Beryl Howell is the federal judge who's going to hear it first. It's then going to go to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. It will eventually make its way, undoubtedly, to the United States Supreme Court, given the constitutional issues that Pence, and frankly, a constitutional, almost, I wouldn't go so far as to say crisis, but this constitutional quagmire that cowardly former Vice President Pence is making here. But this is what I think Jack Smith's going to argue. Number one, you are an executive branch member. You're not a senator. Yes, you hold ceremonial titles as the president of the Senate, but you are an executive branch member. And so you could try to assert executive privilege, but here you don't have executive privilege for the same reasons. The federal court has already overruled assertions of executive privilege when Trump's other top White House lawyers tried to assert it. Cipollone and Philbin, they asserted it because Trump made them assert it. Executive privilege was overruled there. They had to testify on their deliberative private communications with Trump. Same thing when Mark Short, former Vice President Pence's former chief of staff, and Greg Jacobs, former Vice President Pence's former general counsel, they asserted executive privilege as well because Donald Trump made them, and the Judge Beryl Howell made the ruling that executive privilege doesn't apply there. So Jack Smith says, you have executive privilege. You could claim it. It doesn't apply here. One, because there's a compelling government need by the current executive branch. We, the DOJ, are the executive branch. We have a compelling need as part of our criminal investigation, in addition to the fact that, in addition to the compelling need, that the executive privilege only applies to current administrations. A former administration can't assert an executive privilege over the current, would be what Special Counsel Jack Smith would argue as well. Now, with the speech or debate clause, it's not that only a current senator or current member of the House can assert it. It's for the activities when they were on the Senate, when they were engaged in legitimate legislative activity. So if I'm Jack Smith, argument number one, this does not apply to you, Pence. Speech or debate clause, this is ridiculous for you to try to assert it. Number two, as I talked about at the outset of this video, the case Gravel versus United States that went before the Supreme Court brought this distinction between legitimate legislative activity and essentially non-legislative activity. Brewster, the Supreme Court case in 72, also talked about that, which is this kind of purely political campaigning. Like, this is not in your legitimate legislative activity here. This conduct that was taking place, we're talking about treason. We're talking about treasonous conduct. You should not be able to avail yourself of the constitutional speech or debate clause when in fact the very conduct at issue was trying to be subversive to the United States Constitution. So clearly, this should not be covered by the speech or debate clause. And then I think the third argument that Jack Smith should make, I think, is a more surgical one. And you may say, okay, the physical conduct itself on January 6th, when you are presiding over the Senate, when you are acting as the president of the Senate in that role, meaning literally the moments you were there and you were engaged in the count of the electoral votes, when you were fulfilling those tasks, then you could be draped in the role of president of the Senate, and you can then claim speech or debate clause then. But you can't say for all purposes, for all conduct you've engaged in forever, that the vice president should be treated as a senator or a member of the House. You know, you may say, look, I'll concede that on that day, during the time of the counting, speech or debate clause applies. Otherwise, the speech or debate clause should not apply to the remaining conduct. I think Jack Smith will make those arguments. If not, he should watch this video, but I'm confident that they have people who are far smarter than me as well there who already know those arguments. But I think those are ones that Special Counsel Jack Smith can be making. But finally, what I want to talk about here, though, is how cowardly Pence is. I mean, here's somebody who was the target of assassination by Trump. And yet every time, I'm not going to show you the video because it just makes me sick. I'll just do the reenactment for you. Because every time Pence gets asked the questions when he's trying to sell his books, apparently that's fine when he goes out to sell his books, where he wants to tell his narrative, but won't go under oath when it comes to actually protecting our democracy, when it comes to protecting our Constitution. So when he was out for that stupid book tour of his, and people of the press, members of the press would ask him, so how are you still supportive of Donald Trump or all of, or these election deniers or people who basically wanted you killed? How come you're supporting their candidacy when they wanted you murdered? So can you explain that to us, Pence? And Pence would respond, and he would, make that face and go, with his face, he'd go, Well, Well, I want to say first, I'm a Christian. Second, I'm a conservative. And third, I'm a Republican. So therefore, I will support whoever is the Republican nominee. If they call themselves a Republican, you got my support. I don't care if you don't do anything that Republicans said they used to do. Just call yourself a Republican. Then you could try to kill me every day, threaten my life, demean me, degrade me, try to overthrow the democracy. But just call yourself a Republican and I got your back. That's who we are. But notice when he says those three things, Christian, conservative, Republican, what he doesn't say, and by the way, all performative bullshit by him, but notice what he doesn't say, American. He doesn't say, I'm an American. And that's the thing. These MAGA Republicans are fascist traitors for what they've engaged in and spineless cowards, right? Got fascist traitors leading spineless cowards. And we call these people out, not just with our loud voices, not just with the labels, but with facts. And that's what we bring you here on the MeidasTouch Network, the facts. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Everybody, we're getting close to 1 million subscribers. Come on, be a part of it, folks. It's free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So just look where it says subscribe on our YouTube. Hit subscribe right now. Help us get to 1 million subscribers. We want to hit that before April. I want to hit that by mid-March. Can you help us get there? Please, we need independent pro-democracy content, so please hit the subscribe button right now. We are on our way to 1 million subscribers. Thank you. Also, check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. You will love the exclusive content we have on our Patreon site. But most importantly, it helps grow this independent media platform. So please check that out as well. We have no outside investors. We do all of our fundraising, all of our resources is through patreon.com/MeidasTouch for the network. So please check that out right there. And while you're at it, if you haven't seen it yet, check out Killing County. It's on Hulu. I executive produced it with Colin Kaepernick and a great team at ABC and Hulu about the crime, corruption, and cover-up that takes place in Kevin McCarthy's district, Bakersfield. Check it out. Again, now's your time to subscribe. I'm Ben Meiselas. Thank you all so much for watching.
MeidasTouch is unapologetically pro-democracy. And look, we know you are too. So please make sure you check out our best-selling shirt and our best-selling gear, the unapologetically pro-democracy gear. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you check out my favorite shirt and one of our most famous designs. It wasn't rigged, you're just a loser. At store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.